comments on that. And we'll do that in just a moment. But first, committee. Bill introductions by the committee members. Well, this is an unusual year. Normally we'd get, every time I would say those words, people's hands would go up. So I don't have any bill introductions from committee. Do I have bill introductions from the audience? Seeing none. Bill introductions are closed. Tony, I'm going to go ahead and just start while you can get that sent out. We'll take up and open the hearing on House Bill 2089, authorizing the Attorney General to issue an alternative license to carry a concealed handgun to qualified applicants during a declared state of emergency. Reviser, if you give us an overview. Matt,
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, committee. You hear me all right? Excellent. House Bill 2089 would amend KSA 75-7C03 and 7C05 in the Personal and Family Protection Act concerning the issuance of licenses to carry concealed handguns. Under current law, the Attorney General issues such licenses to individuals who comply with the application and training requirements of the Act. And the Act specifies that the license to be issued is on a separate card that is approximately the size of a Kansas driver's license and includes the licensee's signature, name, address, date of birth, and driver's license number. So House Bill 2089 would provide that when a state of disaster emergency had been proclaimed pursuant to KSA 48924 and the Attorney General had independently determined that it was impractical for licensees to obtain a physical card from the Division of Motor Vehicles, the Attorney General could issue an authorization document to licensees. The document would include the same licensee information that is currently required under the Act and would state that the document was proof that the licensee held a valid license to carry concealed handguns. All such documents that were issued during a state of disaster emergency would, per the bill, would expire 90 days after that state of disaster emergency had been terminated. Additionally, under current law, the Attorney General is required to issue a license to carry concealed handguns within 90 days of submission of the documents that were required under the Act. And consistent with that, House Bill 2089 would also require the Attorney General to issue these authorization documents for licensees during a state of disaster emergency within 90 days. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions the committee might have.
questions for the reviser? Seeing no, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This might be maybe more for the conferees, but on line 30 of page 1, it says may issue an authorizing document. So really, this is not a shall issue type piece of legislation, is it?
So, I mean, you're correct that on line 30 it says the Attorney General may issue an authorizing document to each licensee that authorized the licensee. Yep, it says it's a may, not a shall.
Questions of the advisor? Seeing none, our first proponent is the distinguished Attorney General of the state of Kansas, Derek Smith. Attorney General.
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and good morning, and thank you for having a hearing on House Bill 2089. You have my written testimony, so I certainly won't repeat it. Let me just sort of summarize what we're attempting to accomplish here and why, and then I'd be glad to stand for whatever questions the committee may have. So as you know, and perhaps all and certainly most of your committee members know, the concealed carry licensing program in Kansas is administered by the Attorney General's office and has been since its inception, its creation by law. Like many folks, we have run into some unanticipated logistical challenges as a result of the disruptions of COVID. One of those challenges essentially boils down to this. The statute requires that once a person has applied for a concealed carry permit or a renewal of a permit and all of the required processing is done and they're cleared, that there is to be a card, the concealed carry license, that is issued by the Department of Revenue that is the actual legal physical evidence that this person is properly licensed. The concept of this card issued by KDOR is a statutory concept. And so during COVID, from time to time, we've had these bottlenecks where, because the driver's license bureaus have been closed for public health reasons, it's been physically impossible for either people who are otherwise qualified and entitled to receive by law a permit, or who already have one and are entitled by law to get a renewal. It's been physically impossible for them to get the card. And without getting the card, they haven't satisfied the statutory requirement that they have the card, which is the physical evidence of their lawful ability to act as a permittee. This has caused some distress to some applicants, understandably. We've done our best to find a way to address that concern, and we've found a way to accomplish that under current law with respect to renewals. And what we've done, because a renewal application, the person already has a card, they have the original card that was issued by the DMV. The statute requires they have a card, doesn't say anything about expiration dates. So we've been able to find a way through regulatory authority to issue another document, basically a letter certified from the Attorney General's office saying, yes, you're renewed, and your prior card that you possess is your evidence during this emergency that you are still qualified as a permittee. And that's worked okay for renewals. The trouble is for initial applicants, because the initial applicant, first-time applicant, of course, doesn't possess a card because they've never had the permit before. And we haven't been able to find a way under current law to accommodate that physical problem that a person who's otherwise done everything the law requires is entitled to a permit but can't physically get the card because the driver's license bureau was unavailable for a period of time. We haven't found a way under current law to accommodate that. So the intent of this is to create that ability to essentially do for initial permittees the same type of thing we've done for renewals now, to grant authority that if it's impractical and impossible for a person to physically get their card at the end of the process, we can issue substitute temporary documentation that lasts until basically they can get their card. That's the problem we're trying to solve, and that's what this is intended to do. And I'd be happy to stand for questions. Be quick to say I have our concealed carry team here with me, the director of the unit, as well as the counsel for the unit. And so if the questions are particular, I'll quickly defer to them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, General. I do have a question. Representative Heiberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here today, Mr. Attorney General. Given that a permit is not required for concealed carry in Kansas anymore, are there still a substantial number of people applying for licenses?
Representative, there are. As you know, Kansas is a so-called constitutional carry state. So generally speaking, there's not a requirement for a permit to carry concealed here, but there still are benefits to having a permit. There's the NICS bypass for purchases of firearms. There are certain restrictions that are less for a permittee than for a non-permittee. And then, of course, the big one, there's reciprocity with other states. I was looking at I was just checking on our numbers before this, and what did you say we got last month? Around 650? About 650 applicants last month, which is about double the number of the year before. Still well below the 3,000-ish that we received in a month back during that very large wave in around 2013. So, but yes, there still are quite a number of people that seek permits.
I do have some concern with the phrase concealed carry, but I'll save that for constitutional carry. I'll save that for our discussion on the bill, though.
Thank you. Representative Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Attorney General, for bringing this bill forward. I know I was talking to your office during this pandemic stuff that was going on, and so Glad that you guys are addressing this. So real quick, it kind of came up with my revisor question. In the bill, it says may instead of shall. Could you provide your reasoning as to why it says may instead of shall?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the may shall debate has been a very large one in underlying concealed carry policy. And Kansas is a shall issue state, and we're certainly very comfortable with that. This is not intended to counter that in any way. And I don't think I'd have a concern if the committee wanted to alter that, although I'd certainly want to think it through with our team. Our thought was simply, we're not trying to mandate an alternate process for the AG's office here. We're simply trying to give us the flexibility so if the process in law doesn't work because the Driver's License Bureau is shut down, we can find a different way to accomplish the statute's objective. So I think that was our thinking, that this is designed to be enabling. But certainly if there were concern, and you haven't expressed it, but I can imagine that they're given the dynamics of shall and may in a broader sense, I would be fine with that. Again, we were just looking for flexibility because we've learned during this pandemic that sometimes the best laid plans don't work out so well.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. And I'm not worried about you or your administration, but it might be other administrations down the road that I think we also have to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions of the Attorney General? No, seeing none. Thank you, Attorney General. Getting a little feedback here. All right. Next up would be Jason Watkins, Kansas State Rifle Association. Good morning, sir, and welcome to Federal and State Affairs.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for this opportunity. Jason Watkins, appearing on behalf of the Kansas State Rifle Association. I think the bill's been more than adequately explained by both your revisor and the Attorney General. But we did think it was important that we rose in support of the bill this morning. So with that, we would urge adoption of House Bill 2089, and I'd be happy to stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Questions of the Jason Watkins? Seeing no questions? Thank you. Committee, that is all the proponents I have. I have no opponents or neutrals listed. Is there anyone appearing as an opponent or neutral? Seeing none, I will close the hearing on House Bill 2089 and open the hearing on House Bill 2058, allowing reciprocity to recognize out-of-state license to carry a concealed handgun. Revisor, if you would.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2058 would amend KSA 216302 and 757C03 concerning the recognition of licenses from other states for the carrying of handguns and the minimum age to carry a handgun. Under current law, it is illegal for someone under 21 years of age to carry a firearm concealed on their person, except when they are on their own property or in their home or fixed place of business. House Bill 2058 would make an exception from this age requirement for any person who possessed a valid license or permit to carry a concealed firearm that was issued by another jurisdiction and that was recognized in Kansas pursuant to KSA 757C03. The bill would also amend that statute, 7C03, to require that a valid license or permit to carry a concealed firearm that was issued by another jurisdiction be recognized in Kansas, but only while the holder is not a resident of Kansas. This recognition of a license or permit from another jurisdiction would be limited to the concealed carrying of handguns in Kansas, and the holder of that license or permit would be required to otherwise act in accordance with the laws of Kansas while they were present in the state. Be happy to try to answer questions the committee has.
Thank you. Questions for the revisor? Seeing none?
This may be more of a research question, but as we just heard what concealed carry permits, a little bit about that process from the Attorney General. My question would be, how many states have, specifically to concealed carry permits, have less standards in order to get that permit?
And I think that would be more appropriate for the research. Jordan, are you on?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jordan Milholland, Legislative Research. I don't have an answer off the top of my head right now, but I could certainly look into that and provide information to Representative Floyd if she'd prefer.
Thank you. If you could forward that to Connie, then she will get it out to the members.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Yes, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a quick question. Is this the same bill, identical language as what we passed in the previous session?
The revisor. Matt, are you on?
I'm sorry, I couldn't, was there a question directed to me? I couldn't hear.
Yeah, Matt, my question is this the same or identical language that was passed by the House in the previous session, or it was 2 sessions ago? I don't remember when. But it came through this committee.
I might defer to Jordan on that, just since I was over in the Senate, I tracked less on what the House had passed. I believe it is, but Jordan might be a better source of that, or I can just look it up quickly and give you an answer, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Jordan, are you on?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I have not compared the 2 bills recently, so I defer to Matt on that so he could look that up.
I'll get an answer and get back.
Since I was here 2 sessions ago, this is maybe not identical, but it is very similar. And I won't say identical because I don't have the old bill in front of me. But we've had a reciprocity bill in this committee at least 2 prior occasions, possibly 3. And they've all basically have the same language to recognize, because we get in a situation where other states may not want to recognize Kansas's concealed carry because we don't necessarily, we have a different requirement. But I think that's the reason the Attorney General has always brought this bill. But with that, I will turn to the Attorney General. General, are you on the line?
Mr. Chairman, I am.
Thank you. Please go forward.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, you have my written testimony on in support of House Bill 2058. I won't read it or repeat it. Again, let me just try to sort of summarize why we bring this proposal to you. And you're correct, of course, Mr. Chairman. We have brought this to your committee and I think elsewhere for several years now. So here is the issue, at least from our vantage point. Obviously, since 2015, with the enactment of constitutional carry or permitless carry, recognized Senator Heiberger's comment from the prior bill, it is not necessary to have a concealed carry license or to undergo the prerequisites for that, the training requisites, for example, in order to lawfully carry in Kansas, if you're otherwise qualified. But there are reasons that many Kansans continue to seek concealed carry permits, and I think probably chief among them, certainly one of the top 2, and I think probably chief among them, is the fact that a Kansas permit creates reciprocity with many other states. If you have a valid Kansas permit, you can then lawfully, if you go temporarily to Missouri or other states that recognize our permit, you can carry there. Just like, as an analogy, and only to make the point by analogy, just like if you have a Kansas driver's license, you can lawfully drive in other states. You don't have to go get a Missouri driver's license if you drive to Jeff City. So that's probably the biggest reason that Kansans continue to seek permits, even though they don't have to have one in order to lawfully carry here, generally speaking. And we like to encourage permits, so we think the training requirements are good. We think that the background checks are good. And so, generally speaking, we favor policies as a philosophical matter that encourage Kansans to get permits, even though they don't have to have them here. So against that backdrop, reciprocity, recognition by other states of a Kansas permit is really important. It's important for our permittees who want to be able to carry in many other states in many instances, but it's also important, we think, from a public policy standpoint, because it's the biggest or one of the biggest incentives for Kansans to continue to go through the permitting process, even though it may not be legally required. We're very proud that on our watch, we have been able to significantly increase the number of other states that recognize a Kansas permit. When we started, there were, I think it was 25. It was right at 25 states that recognized a Kansas permit. There are today 40, counting Kansas, 39 other states plus Kansas. And we've worked very hard, state by state, one-on-one, to get those reciprocity recognitions agreements in place. A key factor in helping us do that was a provision of law that the legislature enacted in 2013. And that was a provision that was, like you, Mr. Chairman, I won't say identical because I haven't laid them down side by side recently, but it was materially the same as what's in front of you today. And it was a provision that said, as a matter of Kansas law, we would recognize the permits from other states when their residents, their licensees, come temporarily to Kansas. The reason that was so important is it then gave us a provision that we could point to in Kansas statute, black letter law, straightforward, as we were working with other states saying, hey, can we get you to recognize a Kansas permit? Almost always one of the preconditions is, well, do you recognize our permits? And we'd be able to point to that provision and say, yes, we do. As a matter of Kansas state law, we recognize all other states' permits. That's different from where Kansas law was previously, which had, as I think one of the questions on the prior bill sort of implied or at least referenced, we had a equal to or greater than standard in Kansas law. That is to say, there had to be these judgments state by state on whether the requirements for a permit in, say, Missouri under Missouri law were equal to or greater than the requirements in Kansas. And that made it difficult to get a number of other states on board. So anyway, you all enacted this universal reciprocity provision back in 2013. It worked well. We got a number of states moving. I went back and looked at our public statements from that period as we were bringing other states on board. And I saw at least 3 as I quickly glanced through it this morning, where the other states had told us the reason we're now going to recognize a Kansas permit is that you're now clearly recognize our permit. So it worked. Then along came 2015 when you all debated the legislation that created permitless carry or constitutional carry, whatever one wants to call it. And as a provision in that bill, which you enacted and it's now law, you repealed this statutory provision that in black letter law created universal recognition for other states' permits when their permittees are temporarily in Kansas. And I suspect, we weren't part of those discussions, but I suspect part of the thinking was, well, you don't need that anymore because you don't have to have a permit at all in Kansas. So if you're if you're otherwise qualified, so if you're another state's permittee and you come to Kansas, you don't even have to have a permit. We don't have to recognize because you can just carry without a permit. The challenges on that are, I think, twofold as a matter of public policy. One is it does still make it difficult for us to point to black letter provisions in Kansas law that say Kansas recognizes another state's permit. And although so far we haven't had any states that recognize Kansas permits go backwards on us, we have had at least some concern expressed. I don't want to overstate that, but there are other states that are aware that Kansas repealed this provision, and at least some of their staff are concerned about why. What's that mean in terms of Kansas recognition of our permittees when they come to your state, and implying that might affect how we continue to recognize Kansas permittees abroad. And then the other issue, which is the more substantive one, committee of the legislature just has to decide what you want to do on it. There are asymmetries among the requirements for a permit in different states. There are in some states differences in training requirements. There are in some states differences in minimum age requirements. And there are at least some of those categories where the asymmetry creates a gap, where somebody from another state who would have been able to lawfully carry temporarily in Kansas before with universal recognition cannot now because we don't recognize their permit. And there's an asymmetry between the permitless carry law in Kansas and the requirement for a permit in another state. So, in other words, there are at least some people in other states who could lawfully temporarily carry in Kansas before who cannot now. And I don't think it's a large number of people overall, but it's real. And again, that's been noticed. Now, so far, nobody's gone backwards on us because of that. But that's the bottom line, Mr. Chairman. We're trying to maintain what we thought was a good gain in public policy back in 2013 that helped us maximize the number of other states where Kansas permit is valid. And that's why we bring you this proposal again this year. And I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, General. Representative Heiberger?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill would allow an 18 to 20-year-old from a state that allows 18 to 20-year-olds to carry with a permit to carry a concealed weapon in Kansas, even though that privilege isn't allowed to 18 to 20-year-olds who are residents of Kansas. Do you know of any other statutory scheme that allows privileges to out-of-state residents that are denied to Kansas residents?
Well, I'd want to check, Representative, but I think this one did from 2013 to 2015 before it was repealed. Beyond that, I don't have one off the top of my head. But obviously your point's, a good one. That's been the largest flashpoint of debate on this since started coming back to you and saying, did you really mean to repeal the former law or not back in 2015?
Thank you. Further questions of the Attorney General? Miller?
General, would you know how many of my constituents would be affected?
Sorry, I didn't catch who was talking, although it probably doesn't
This
affect
is
my answer.
Representative Vic Miller. I used to be in the Senate when you recognized me.
I do remember you, Representative. No, I don't know.
I think the answer is 0, isn't it?
Oh, I seriously doubt that,
I
Representative.
have no constituents that are out-of-state residents, and doesn't this bill only affect out-of-state residents?
No, Representative. As I was trying to explain, I'm sorry, did you want me to answer that?
It's all right. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to answer the question before another question's asked. Go ahead, Mr. General.
Thank you. As I was trying to explain, and perhaps imperfectly earlier, Representative, that our interest from the AG's office is really not in other states' residents. Our interest is in Kansas residents who are permit holders who wish to carry in the maximum number of other jurisdictions possible. And a concern that we have that the repeal of universal recognition by the legislature in 2015 I don't want to overcharacterize it, but it certainly creates the risk that some states that currently recognize Kansas permits will go backwards and be less inclined to recognize them. And that, of course, would affect many Kansans, including, I suspect, some of your constituents.
Thank you.
Representative Clayton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for testifying before us today. I heard that you mentioned earlier that one of the issues that was put into place that caused some of this conflict was the constitutional carry bill that was passed in 2015. I was a member of this committee at that time and remember it well. Could we perhaps remedy this by repealing constitutional carry? It doesn't really seem to be that necessary, sets us back into uniformity, so would you support something like that?
No, actually, obviously that's a separate issue, Representative Clayton, and I actually don't think merely repealing constitutional carry, if the legislature were so inclined, solves this problem. The problem is not the enactment of constitutional carry. The problem is the repeal of the universal recognition provision in the concealed carry permitting statute. So I don't think whatever you might choose to do, if anything, on constitutional carry addresses the problem we're concerned about, which is the undermining of our ability to persuade other states to recognize Kansas permits because we recognize theirs.
Further questions of the Attorney General? Seeing none. I'm sorry. Representative Heiberger.
Well, I was going to let this go today, but Isn't it accurate that Justice Scalia in the Heller decision observed that a state, the Second Amendment does not prohibit a state from either regulating or banning concealed carry? And if you haven't read it recently, I understand, but.
Yeah, of course. I assume, Representative Heiberger, this goes to the point you expressed earlier about the concern you have with the phrase constitutional carry. Am I understanding correctly?
That was a yes.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. Yes, I haven't looked at Heller recently, but my recollection is that you've accurately described Justice Scalia's comment. Whether you call the Kansas system constitutional carry or permitless carry, whatever you want to call it, the substance remains the same. But I certainly recognize the point, and at least when speaking with you, Representative, I'll try to remember to use permitless carry as the descriptive phrase.
Thank you. No further questions of the Attorney General? Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. Thank you for coming today, or appearing today by WebEx, and it worked. So thank you, sir. We have one other proponent, Jason Watkins, with the Kansas State Rifle Association. Again, sir, welcome to Federal and State Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason Watkins on behalf of the Kansas State Rifle Association. And again, I'll be very brief on this bill. The Kansas State Rifle Association does stand in conditional support of this bill. We do think that it's important to address the reciprocity issue. In fact, we think it's very important to address the reciprocity issue. We do have concerns with the inequity between Kansas residents and residents of other states in terms of the 18, 19, and 20-year-old carry. So we think you could either amend this bill to allow for that in Kansas, or there's a hearing, I think, that's coming up after this bill that would also address that. So again, reciprocity needs to be addressed. So we do conditionally support this bill, but would either request that you pass 2059 or amend this bill. And I'd be happy to stand for questions at the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Questions for Watkins? Seeing none? Thank you, sir. Anyone else appearing as a proponent to House Bill 2058? Seeing none, I will close that portion and open up the portion of opponents. The first opponent is Rabbi Morty. Is he on? He is? Rabbi, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. We will hear your testimony now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Rabbi Moti Reber. I'm the executive director of Kansas Interfaith Action. We are a statewide faith-based issue advocacy group that works on a variety of social, economic, and economic justice issues. We are a state public policy office of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America and have partnerships with the United Church of Christ and with the Episcopal Diocese of Kansas. One of KIFA's key issues is gun violence. The people of faith who make up KIFA support strong gun legislation that would address the pandemic of gun violence in our country. The pastors that I work with are on the front lines of gun violence, holding the hands of survivors and their families after an accident, a suicide, or a shooting. We have testified in this committee many times over the years basically in opposition to Kansas's 10-year experiment in getting rid of most gun restrictions. We think that we have said for years that the repercussions of this would be deadly, and they have been. I'll just read a little bit of this. Between 2009 and 2018, the overall gun death rate in Kansas increased by 37%. The homicide rate increased 34%, and the suicide rate increased 40%. Suicides, particularly in rural Kansas, are climbing quickly and affect disaffected individuals, particularly men between the ages of 35 and 54. Concealed carry reciprocity would mean that people who are ineligible to carry in Kansas would be allowed to. that could include, in some states, people who are convicted of stalking, some violent misdemeanors, and also there's the implications for teenagers, which I focus more on in the other bill, but will say there are reasons, which I'll talk about when we get to 2059, but there are reasons why teenagers are restricted from concealed carrying in Kansas. Those are good reasons. We would oppose anything that would undermine the distinction between teenagers and adults in concealed carry. I'll refer you to my written testimony where I bring a quote from the Presbyterian Church, one of many quotes I could give about the dangers of profligacy in gun laws. But I will say in conclusion that Kansas's 10-year experiment in doing away with gun laws is what happens when you put ideology over real-world consequences and the impacts of human lives. The conversation is always very theoretical about concealed carry and reciprocity, but it does not talk about the real-world implications of the increase in gun violence and the increase in gun suicides. It's time to treat gun violence as the pandemic, as the crisis that it is, and to turn back from our determination to get rid of all gun laws. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Rabbi. Committee, we have 4 opponents. I'm going to take all 4 and then we'll go to questioning. The next up is Crystal Hayes on WebEx. You there, Crystal Hayes?
Yes, sir, I am.
You may go forward. Your testimony.
Thank you. Members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to submit testimony today. My name is Crystal D. Hayes. I am a lifelong resident of Kansas City, Kansas, a survivor lead, mentor, and survivor fellow of Moms Demand Action in Everytown for Gun Safety. I am submitting written testimony today in opposition to Bill HB 258. 258, which would automatically allow individuals with permits from other states to carry hidden and loaded firearms in Kansas and on the streets of our community. A community that continues to battle with repeated incidents of gun violence. Being a survivor of gun violence repeatedly, you lose a sense of safety and security, even in your own home. With the fear of the unknown is heightened to a fever pitch. Even doing something as simple as going to the grocery store to shop for a family meal induces re-traumatization. Not knowing if you will be the next victim or witness of gun violence, not knowing if the person in front of you should be considered a threat to your already lack of sense of security, a person who you may not already know. You don't know if or what incidents of trauma they are experiencing. You don't know if struggling with some form of mental illness, if they may, experience impulsive reaction to violence. You don't know if the individual has already exhibited violent tendencies or has a previous or previously been involved in incidents that in which a handgun was already used. You don't know if in fact the individual has a permit to carry, had training or some safety protocol, and they might not even be someone local. They might not meet Kansas standards for carrying a concealed permit. The law, if this law passes, they may legally be able to carry a loaded handgun. As community leaders, community activists, advocates, and lawmakers, we should not contribute to the dangers of the community by allowing for people to carry hidden loaded handguns in public. We as leaders need to prioritize and keep our community safe and not pass laws that increase the risk of gun violence. Thank you.
ma'am. If you will remain on WebEx, at some point in time, we will have questions.
Thank you.
The next opponent is Amanda Winch, Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. Amanda, are you on?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Please, go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, to the Vice Chair and to the committee for allowing me to testify today. My name is Amanda Winch. I am a lifelong Kansan. I grew up in Wichita, Kansas. I now reside in Overland Park with my family. I'm a parent of 2 young boys, an alumna of Kansas State University, and I'm also the volunteer Kansas chapter leader of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. We're a nonpartisan grassroots gun violence prevention organization, and we respect the Second Amendment. I became involved with Moms Demand Action over 4 years ago because as a new mother, I thought it was important to raise awareness about gun safety and felt that no parent should have to endure losing a child in such a senseless way. I want to say that on behalf of the thousands of Moms Demand Action supporters in the state of Kansas, we oppose HB 2058 because it would further roll back gun laws in our state and threaten the integrity of Kansas's concealed carry permit. Passing this bill would allow people with permits from other states to carry hidden loaded handguns in Kansas communities, even if they would be ineligible for a permit in Kansas. In our country, 14 states issue concealed carry permits to teenagers who are not eligible to carry concealed handguns in public under current Kansas law. Of those states, 10 allow certain convicted stalkers to obtain permits, 9 fail to require live fire handgun safety training, and 6 issue permits to many violent misdemeanor offenders. I urge you to oppose HB 2058, which will allow untrained people and those with dangerous histories from other states to carry concealed handguns into Kansas. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, and if you would remain on WebEx, at some point in time there may be questions. My last opponent is Mary Snipes, Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America, appearing by WebEx. Mary, are you on? Mary, are you on WebEx? You'll need to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. You may go
All
forward.
right. All right. Good morning and thank you. My name is Snipes. I am a constituent from Gary County, City of Junction City, Kansas 66441. I am submitting testimony virtually due to state and county health guidelines in an effort to keep myself and others safe. I am a mother, a parent, a wife, a sister, an aunt, and a friend. I have had COVID-19 and currently wearing oxygen. I am a survivor of gun violence and COVID-19. My family's life changed on Friday, August 31st, 2018, when someone shot and took our 29-year-old son, Felix Snipes, away from us. Felix had an awesome smile, would tell jokes that sometimes weren't funny, but you just had to laugh at him. He cared deeply about his siblings and parents. Felix was free-spirited. He loved wearing loud neon colors, but he also enjoyed dressing up as if he was a model. He wanted everyone to get along with each other, especially family. He cared about giving to others even when he didn't have anything. He was one of the top-ranked athletes in the state of Kansas for sports during his high school years. We have had so many great memories and lovable moments of Felix that I could go on and on and on. Felix was our child, our son, a brother. He was not a number. I miss him every day. Losing a child is like a form of emptiness. This is my reality. I am submitting testimony concerning the concealed carry reciprocity bill, HB 2058, would automatically recognize license to carry a concealed firearm issued by other jurisdiction. This bill will be a setback for Kansas gun laws. I oppose this bill because it will allow people with permits from other states to carry concealed handguns in Kansas, even if they would be ineligible for a Kansas permit. It will make our families, communities, schools, homes, neighborhoods, parks, and stores dangerous, unsafe. We have gone through anger, hurt, pain, denial, questioning why, many emotions, but we will keep going. We all need to take a stand on gun safety solutions for our state, families, communities, neighborhoods. Think of the total amount of lives taken from senseless acts of gun violence. Please vote no on HB 2058. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Committee, any questions for the opponents? Seeing no questions, the chair will direct you to the written opponents. You should have a list of those in your packet. Please review all of the written opponents. Any neutrals appearing here today? No one appears as a neutral. Then I will close the hearing on House Bill 2058 and open the hearing on House Bill 2059. Reviser, if you would give us an overview.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. And before I jump into that, I looked quickly. In 2019, the committee passed House Bill 2326, which does appear to be the same language as House Bill 2058. That bill was subsequently amended on the House floor, so it did go over to the Senate different than this committee passed out.
Thank you. I recall that being amended on the floor. Could you give us an overview on 2059?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2059 would amend a number of statutes concerning recognition of licenses to conceal carry a handgun and creating a special license for individuals under the age of 21 years. Under current law, it's illegal for an individual under 21 years of age to carry a firearm concealed on their person, and the Attorney General is prohibited from issuing a license to conceal carry to any individual under the age of 21. House Bill 2059 would recognize a valid license or permit to carry a concealed handgun that was issued by another jurisdiction. The recognition of that license or permit would be limited to the concealed carrying of handguns in Kansas, and the holder would be required to otherwise follow Kansas law while present in the state. The bill would also authorize the Attorney General to issue provisional licenses to individuals that were less than 21 years of age. The bill would make it legal for an individual that had a provisional license issued by the Attorney General or had a license or permit issued by another jurisdiction that was recognized by Kansas to carry a concealed handgun. And the bill would make several corresponding changes to existing exceptions to other criminal statutes to clarify that possession of a concealed handgun would be legal if the individual was 21 years of age or either had a provisional license or a license or permit issued by another jurisdiction that was recognized in Kansas. And I would be happy to try to answer questions the committee may have.
Thank you. Committee, questions for the reviser? Yes, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have some concerns with how far-reaching this bill is, so I do have a few questions, if that's all right. First off, the federal law requires that an individual be 21 to purchase a handgun at a federally licensed gun dealer. So 18, 19, and 20-year-olds can't go into Cabela's or a federally licensed gun dealer like that and purchase a handgun. Since we don't have background checks on all gun sales, there are some loopholes. Would the reviser walk us through what these purchases would be like in private sales for 18, 19, and 20-year-olds?
Is that a question to the reviser?
Yes.
Okay. All right,
So Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the bill would not change the purchasing requirements of a handgun. Federal law would still require you to be 21 to purchase a handgun. So if Kansas law allowed the concealed carrying of a handgun by individuals under 21, that would not change their ability to purchase a handgun. Someone else would have, they would have to obtain that handgun through a different legal means than it would not be lawful for them to purchase it until they were 21.
Another law that we have is in state law is that municipal governments are required to allow their employees to carry while on the job. When I was 18, 19, and 20, those summers I spent working as a lifeguard for a municipal pool, would municipal, public, state employers be required to allow their 18, 19, and 20-year-old employees to conceal carry handguns while at work?
So thank you. 75 7C20 concerning concealed handguns in public buildings. A municipality cannot prohibit an employee from carrying a concealed handgun at their workplace unless the building has adequate security measures at all public access entrances and is conspicuously posted pursuant to the Personal and Family Protection Act.
Okay, thank you. So yes, and this one I'm really want you to weigh in on here. State law exempts carrying a concealed handgun in schools, K through 12, not college campuses. But federal law prohibits carrying a loaded firearm in a school zone unless the person has a carry license issued by the state where the school is located. Does this bill and the state and federal laws cumulative effect allow let's say 18-year-old high school seniors to carry hidden loaded handguns in their high schools and K through 12 schools?
So that's a complex question. A couple responses. One, Kansas statute 726132 authorizes authorizes schools to require expulsion from school for a period of at least a year any pupil that possesses a weapon at school. So schools are authorized to prohibit weapons by students in school, and that would be unchanged. As far as the criminal carrying of the weapon, you're correct in that Kansas state law prohibits carrying in a school zone, then provides exceptions that say you're allowed to carry in a school zone if not prohibited by federal law. The federal law, which requires you're correct, that says the federal law requires a license issued by that state to be exempt from the prohibition. However, there's another wrinkle to that in that federal law is authorized under the Interstate Commerce Act, and so it has to be in interstate. The weapon needs to be in interstate commerce. So the possession of a firearm in school zone would have to be a firearm that was subject to interstate commerce. We have the Kansas Second Amendment Protection Act. So if you have a Kansas firearm that was not subject to interstate commerce, that would then not be subject to that federal law, and thus the exception would apply. So I guess the short answer to that complicated question is that it's a fact-based, like case-by-case analysis.
Thank you. Heiberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Matt, could you explain what difference there is, if any, between the provisional license created by this bill and the existing license?
Yes, let me pull up the bill real fast again. So the provisional license would be open to individuals that were under 21. Right now, all licensing is for individuals that are 21 years of age or older. So this would create a separate provisional license for individuals that were 18 years of age, and then would have an adult license for individuals that were 21 years of age.
A provisional license is just a license for an 18 to 20-year-old, but we call it provisional, essentially.
The provisional license would be subject to the same training and application requirements as the existing license.
But there aren't any extra restrictions on the provisional license.
There are not.
Thank you. Further questions of the reviser? Seeing none. Our first proponent, and folks, I'm looking at the clock, and you know I'm always watching the clock. I'm giving the proponents 12 minutes, and I'm giving the opponents 12 minutes. That should take us till about 25 after. All right. Thank you, Representative Carpenter. I would say welcome to Federal and State Affairs, but you're always here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, fellow committee members. I appreciate your time this morning. So I'll get to Representative Heiberger's comments about why we have a separate provisional license in this bill here in a few moments. So really, I think we've heard a lot from House Bill 2058. It's very repetitive when it comes to House Bill 2059. The Attorney General, I think, did a fantastic job of explaining how we got to where we are today. And so I want to thank the Attorney General for basically giving us the base bill for House Bill 2059. We've heard it repeatedly, that base bill, in recent years, but in this bill we have added a little bit of a twist to it, in which we are adding a new provisional license to concealed carry. So right now, I don't think we want to authorize non-state residents to be able to carry to Kansas, but then not authorize and have those same rights for our own constituents. So, and twice now, this bill's probably passed out 3 times, I think, but twice now at least on the House floor, it has been amended to allow for our constituents to also be able to go ahead and obtain a concealed carry license. According to reports, there were as many as 5 million new gun owners last year. 5 million, that's a lot of people, first-time gun owners. People are obviously very concerned about protecting themselves and their loved ones. This legislation will allow Kansas adults to protect themselves and their loved ones. The gun control lobby is going to argue that these are children, teenagers. No, they are adults in the eyes of the law. At age 18, you're tried as an adult, they can vote, they can enter contracts, just to name a few things. Nothing magical happens when you turn 21, unlike the other side will start to argue. Now, granted, we are starting to bestow different rights or different things in law on people 21, whether it's tobacco or alcohol, but that still doesn't change a lot of the other aspects of our law where we consider people at 18 an adult. Many Kansans are responsible gun owners at 18, 19, and 20 years old. Some of these Kansans are serving in our armed forces where they have even bigger weapons than the ones that we are even discussing here today. As a matter of fact, these same 18 to 20-year-old Kansans can currently open carry handguns in the state of Kansas, but by putting a simple piece of clothing over their firearm, now it's illegal. So I don't believe that it's a bridge too far. I think that it is just putting a piece of clothing over somebody, and actually we're requiring training right now with this proposal, whereas with open carry, I do not believe that exists today. So this is the same training and standard as the current license, and the reason why, after having conversations last year with some folks, I think that the provisional idea is good is because we do not want to impact the standard license. And what I mean by that is if, say, for instance, we go ahead and move the standard license down to 18 years of age, well, then what other states might not recognize 18, 19, or 20-year-old carry? So in order to prevent losing people from repealing our license from their state, we are going to create this provisional license, which then the Attorney General would have the ability to go out to other states and basically say, here's another license that the state of Kansas offers. Do you approve or not approve? Right now, we have 40 states under the standard license. This new provisional license could end up with 10, 15, 20, 30 states, all of them. But it is just a simple protection to make sure that we do not lose any states potentially if we do lower the age. So, Mr. Chairman, I will stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you. I'll finish the next proponent and then we'll have questions. Second proponent, Jason Watkins, Kansas State Rifle Association. Again, welcome to the committee.
Is that better? Jason Watkins, Kansas State Rifle Association. I will be brief on this as well. The revisor explained it well. Representative Carpenter, I think, made a good case and explanation of the reasoning behind this bill. I think one major thing we would like to point out, and Representative Carpenter did this as well, 18, 19, and 20-year-old Kansans can already carry a firearm. The second they put on a coat or they put on a jacket, now they're breaking the law. It's interesting when you talk to folks that have concerns with guns, there's a lot of folks that don't like open carry. I'm not making a case against open carry today. I want to be clear about that, Mr. Chairman. The Kansas State Rifle Association supports open carry. But there are a lot of opponents when it comes to firearms that think that when somebody open carries, they're showing off, they're flouting that. You hear from a lot of folks, just put a coat over that. Today, we're talking about allowing 18, 19, and 20-year-olds who can already open carry to be able to put on a jacket or to wear that on the ankle. By the way, this isn't necessarily a new concept in the United States. The previous bill that you heard dealt with the reciprocity issue in large part because of 18, 19, and 20-year-olds that are allowed to conceal carry in other states. In fact, there's 12 of them. A quarter of the states in this country allow for concealed carry by 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. And by the way, they're not the far west states. Some of them are. But they're also states like West Virginia, Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Delaware. So again, 12 states, 24% allow for this. There's another 7 that allow for concealed carry by 18, 19, and 20-year-olds if they're in the United States military. And then, of course, our neighbor directly to the east, Missouri, is at 19. So when you put all those numbers together, you're well over 30%. So, Mr. Chairman, we don't think this is an extreme or radical concept. It's something that's common throughout the United States. We'd ask that when the committee rises and reports, it reports House Bill 2059 favorable for passage, and I'd be happy to stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you, committee. This is the appropriate time to ask the proponents. Any questions? Do we have questions of the proponents? Oh, Representative Clayton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam Vice Chair. You two work together great on this. Thank you for being here, Mr. Watkins. I have 2 quick questions. Number 1, can you remind me, is concealed carry, our current laws, is it just wearing it with a, a jacket or, in the pant leg? Not that that'd be an issue for me. Or does this also include, say, putting a gun in a backpack?
I didn't hear the last part of your question. Did you say backpack?
Yes, backpack, purse, handbag, satchel, any synonym thereof for a bag.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not just an issue of putting on a coat, it's an issue of concealing a weapon, although frankly I prefer open carry because I like to know what I'm dealing with. Second question, so we talked a lot about what is an adult and what isn't, and we do that a lot here. We talk about what it is and it is not, and so in this case, you have to be 21 in order to consume alcohol. You have to be older to, have some other certain responsibilities. Do you support, say, lowering the drinking age back to 18 for more of a universally accepted line of what is and what is not an adult, just in general.
I don't think the State Rifle Association, Mr. Chairman, is going to weigh in on the drinking age. I haven't been able to survey my board on their opinion of that. I do understand the point that you're making, though, Representative, and alcohol would be one of the few things that we prohibit people partaking in until they're 21. At the age of 18, you can join the United States military and go die for your country. You can vote. Almost everything that we allow adults to do starts at 18, with the exception of alcohol. I do understand your point, though.
Thank you. Representative Penn. And this will be last question. I want to get the opponents on board.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Watkins, thank you so much for coming today and providing testimony. I'd like to piggyback on the back of Representative Clayton. She says that she likes to know what she's dealing with open carry. Could you speak to the concept of soft and hard targets, please, when it comes to open or concealed carry?
I think Representative Carpenter is wanting to answer that question.
Fantastic.
Maybe better to do so.
Thank you, Representative, for the question. I think I understand what you're asking. Basically, folks, I think the point you're trying to make is that folks who open carry might be more of a target and to those that are concealing and carrying. Is that what you're trying to ask?
That's where I'm going with it. And the next piece of that question is, if a female student or a young husband or wife or whatever, being 18, 19, 20 years old, under this bill, this bill that you're providing, would they be able to be a hard target to protect their families?
Under the current proposal, yes, those individuals would be able to protect themselves and third parties.
This does not discriminate against any of those women who may have been a victim of sexual assault and would want to have that extra sense of security.
If they chose to get a license, then they would be able to do so under this current provision.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee, as always, I'm the bad guy here. We have spent the time that's allotted because I have opponents that wish to testify, and I want to get them in today. So if all the testimony that we have has contact information on it, if you have questions of any of those conferees, we're not going to see this bill tomorrow, so you will have an opportunity to contact them, get your specific questions answered. Anyways, we're going to the opponent section. I would mention that we have one written proponent, Travis Culture Lovelady with the NRA. Please read his testimony. Moving to the opponents, we have 5 opponents. We need to limit their time. I'll task that to my vice chair. First up is Angela Lee, Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense. Angela, are you on web? Oh, you're appearing in person. Thank you very much. We're going to limit you to about 2 to 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman and distinguished committee. I am a opponent against the HB 2059. I've personally experienced gun violence not once but twice. In 2017, June 26, 2017, my life changed drastically. I was on vacation for one day, and I got the phone call from a parent that no parent ever wants to ever receive. She asked me if it was true. My 18-year-old son was shot. I never in my life felt so lost. This is a picture of justice, the last picture that we took together. I struggled on the way home, just kind of trying to understand why, what, nobody was telling me anything. I thought I couldn't cry anymore. Justice had just graduated in May of 2017. He was headed to play football at Washburn University, and he didn't make it. He was gone before we had even got back to town. He had a promising career in sports, football, and track. But that night he died because a 16 and a 17-year-old had stolen a gun out of a car, and my son was gone in a blink of an eye. I never even got to say goodbye. Lives were changed that night, not only my family's lives, but the lives of the individuals that shot my son. 2 of them would spend time in jail. One is a juvenile, and he is out walking today in less than 3.5 years. And the other will serve 27.5 years in prison. That was the first slap in the face. Hundreds of kids lined the church. We had over 600 people in that church, and it was at maximum capacity. Many didn't even get to come.
30 seconds left.
18, 19, and 20-year-olds are more likely to kill at 4 times higher at gun homicide rates. It's the second leading cause of death. Kids should not be, I heard testimony, kids should not be worried about, they can't even decide what they're going to eat and they're going to wear, let alone we're asking them to carry a gun. I am definitely rejecting the HB 2059 that would allow teenagers to carry guns. That's the just common sense gun safety and to keep our Americans safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Next committee, we have Crystal on WebEx. Crystal, are you available on WebEx?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to limit you to 2.5 minutes since the Senate has to be in here at 10:30. So your time has started.
Thank you. Thank you to the chairman and the committee for allowing me to speak and hearing my testimony. My name is Crystal D. Hayes, and I am submitting this testimony in opposition to Bill HB 2059. In August of 2006, I killed leaving my family, including her 3 teenage children, devastated and struggling to deal with my first experience with personal gun violence. Almost a year to the day, August 2017, 17-year-old son Lee Andrew Bond and 16-year-old nephew Adarius Barber were shot and killed by sitting in a car in front of a friend's house after a day of shoe shining. Here would have been in his senior year in high school. These 2 young men did not high-risk lifestyle. They were good students, even better athletes, sons, brothers, uncles, cousins, nephews, grandsons, and friends. What is suspected by law enforcement is these acts were committed by underage youth. Since 2016, my family and I have experienced repeated gun violence incidents. For me, another nephew, a cousin, and a friend. HB 2059 would lower the age limit, allowing teenagers to carry a hidden and loaded firearms in public. Statistics show that incidents of gun violence, including suicides, unintentional shootings, are committed by individuals under 18. Lowering the age limit will increase the number of such incidents and acts, giving teenagers increased opportunities to commit, contemplate, and involve themselves in incidents and committing acts with firearms. Teenagers who do not pose the ability to purchase alcohol and tobacco products. Teenagers who do not already have the ability or possess the skills to resolve conflict. And a
Crystal, I'm
teenager
sorry, your
who,
time is up.
even without, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Next up is Dr. Kimberly Molick, American Academy of Pediatrics, Kansas chapter. Are you on, doctor? She's
Mr. Chair, I believe she was called into surgery.
very well. Rabbi, are you on?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Please go forward.
Thank you, sir. I'm Rabbi Moti Reber, Kansas Interfaith Action, opposing HB 2059. I wanted to just point out my testimony is available to you. There's a reason why 18 to 20-year-olds are treated differently than 21 and over. Their risk assessment and decision-making capacities are less developed. That's why 18, 19, and 20-year-olds commit gun homicides at a rate nearly 4 times higher than adults 21 and older. 38% of all suicides by people under 21 are committed with a gun, because that's the most effective way of committing suicide. Reducing access to guns for young people reduces the number of suicides. The 3 leading causes of death among young people are unintentional suicide, homicide, unintentional injury, suicide, and homicide. Guns play a role in each. Representative Hoy pointed out some of the problems with the bill in terms of employment issues. I'll also point out that some years ago when we were talking about guns on college campuses, the gun lobby argued that it was okay because only people 21 and over would be allowed to carry on campus. This would eliminate that distinction. In addition, municipalities are allowed to regulate open carry in municipal buildings, as in the libraries in Johnson County don't allow open carry, but are restricted from prohibiting concealed carry. The same as the case with universities. Open carry is restricted, but concealed carry will now be open to 18 to 21-year-olds, which means that any undergraduate would be able to carry a loaded handgun on college campuses, which would only make the situation that we talked about some years ago worse. Again, I'll just say that gun violence is a public health crisis. The goal here should be to increase the safety of our population, to increase the ability of the state to regulate who carries and what kind of weapons they carry. Instead, thank you. This is a continuation of the social experiment by the gun lobby to rid Kansas of all meaningful gun restrictions. It's based on a misguided and deadly ideology. It's a failed experiment, and we should stop it now by voting down HB 2059. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi, and I look forward to the day the Capitol's back open and you can come by the office and visit with me as you have in past years.
I look forward to that, Mr. Chairman.
Next up is Simi Rogers, Moms Demand Action. Is she on WebEx? Indicates she is. Are you there?
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me?
Please. Go forward.
Members of the committee, Chairman, I'm Simi Rogers. I became involved with Moms Demand Action after my son, Rowan Padgett, was shot to death in a robbery in Olathe on March 29th, 2019, 2 weeks before he would have turned 18. The effect of his death on our family has been profound and is something we will always have to live with every minute of every day. The young man who shot him had recently turned 18. He has a statistic, one that shows that young people with access to guns are more likely to commit gun homicides than people over 21. Car insurance companies know young people have higher rates of accidents. That's why they charge higher rates for young drivers. Why would we allow these young people to carry concealed handguns is beyond my comprehension. I want to prevent needless deaths by guns. No mother should have to go through what our family has been through. If these bills make it into law, almost certainly kids will end up dead who should be alive, the way my son should be alive. I oppose HB 2059. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Committee, I would direct you to the written opponents. There's about 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 written opponents. Please review that testimony. Questions for the opponents? Committee. Yes, Representative Wagner, if you'll direct who you're.
Yes, actually this would be to the Kansas Interfaith Action, the rabbi.
Go ahead.
You cited statistics saying that the adults 21 and older are 4 times, have a higher commit homicides with guns than people 18, 19, and 20. Would not the more relevant comparison be the statistic of 18, 19, and 20-year-olds versus 21, 22, and 3-year-olds? Are you not actually skewing the statistic by having older adults who, by all accounts, have a obviously less inclination for guns or gun violence?
Well, the distinction here is between, right now, the law is that 18, 19, and 20-year-olds are in a different legal category than people 21 and over. I don't think it skews anything to acknowledge that's the distinction right now. We're not saying that, 21, 22, and 23-year-olds have a license and 18, 19, and 20-year-olds don't. The difference is 21 and under, 20 and under versus 21 and over. I mean, I'd have to go back and look. I have the statistic that I cited. I have a citation for the statistic that I cited. I'd have to go back and look to do additional research to find out what the difference is in those age groups that you're saying. But I think that the legal distinction is between under 21s and 21 and over. That's the relevant distinction.
Short question.
Okay. A follow-up question. Is it not also true from your earlier testimony that the number of guns has gone up dramatically in the last 25 years, but the murder rate in America has actually dropped dramatically in the last 25 years, which would conflate your testimony?
Well, I think in my previous testimony, now I'd have to call up the other testimony, but I think that I'm muted. I think that I'd have to call up my other testimony, which we don't really have time for, but I think that we're seeing, according to my testimony in the other bill, the murder rate and the suicide rate in Kansas has gone up dramatically since we started to loosen our gun laws 10 years ago. I would refer you, I really recommend that you read the book Dying of Whiteness, which has a large chapter and a lot of statistics about this issue. Violent crime is down, but gun violence is up. I'd be happy to come to provide you with additional statistics and additional reading material on the issue. But since Kansas has and other states have started to get rid of legal restrictions on gun ownership and concealed carry, gun violence and suicide rates have gone up and continue to go up.
Thank you. Thank you. That's the last question. We have about 4 minutes left. I've directed there are no neutrals. Anyone appearing as a neutral? Seeing none, I will close the hearing on House Bill 2059 with the understanding, committees, if you have other questions, you have the contact information of all the conferees. That concludes all the hearings today. Tomorrow we'll be working the bill we heard yesterday, the Creighton bill. I'll send out a new agenda for next week. Anything for the good of the committee? Seeing none, we are adjourned.